Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central TV. I am Judith TV. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. And we begin with updates on the crisis in the Middle East. Israel carried out a deadly air raid on Thursday on Hezbollah rescue facility in central Beirut, killing at least 6 people. This comes after multiple Israeli ground troops, were killed near the border on Wednesday. The second strike, targeting the capital center this week, follows Iran launching its largest missile attack yet on its arch-foe, Israel, prompting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to warn Tehran would pay for its, quote, big mistake. Iran, which backs Hezbollah, said it would step up its response if Israel retaliates, defying calls for de-escalation in a war that has cost more than 1,000 lives in Lebanon. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden has ruled out Israeli strikes against Iran for now, easing tensions in the region. This comes after Iran's massive missile attack on Israel, which has sparked widespread concern. Now, Biden's assurance temporarily diffuses the crisis, but the situation remains volatile. Meanwhile, Israel has vowed to respond to the attack, but the timing and nature of their response remain uncertain.
To allow Israel to strike back against Iran?
First of all, we don't allow Israel, we advise Israel, and there's nothing going to happen today. We'll talk about that later.
Will there be American...
The Swedish intelligence agency SAPO suspects Iran's involvement in recent explosions and gunfire around Israeli embassies in Sweden and Denmark. During a press conference in Stockholm, Fredrik Hallström, head of operations at SAPO, mentioned that the choice of targets and modus operandi suggests Iran's possible role. However, he clarified that this is an assumption rather than confirmed knowledge.
Det går ju heller inte att låta bli och säga att det finns en del som talar för att det skulle kunna vara så. Delvis utifrån målval och modus operandi, men det är ett antagande snarare än en ren kunskap. Statliga aktörer och främmande makt agerar brett och parallellt emot olika perspektiv för att nå kunskap eller innovation eller information som är nödvändig för deras regims framgång. Men man kan väl säga så här att det finns väl en central utgångspunkt att andra stater, främmande makt utnyttjar de sårbarheter som vi har i Sverige.
Som jag har nämnt flera gånger tidigare så hanterar vi 3 hot mot den inre säkerheten parallellt. Terrorism och våldsbejakande extremism, statliga aktörer som agerar fientligt mot Sverige och så den systemhotande organiserade brottsligheten. I augusti förra året så beslutade då chefen för Säkerhetspolisen att höja terrorhotnivån från ett förhöjt till ett högt hot, från en 3 till en 4 på den 5-gradiga skalan.
In a related development, Lebanon's health minister, Faris Abihad, announced that Israeli fire has killed over 40 paramedics and firefighters in 3 days, with a total of 97 killed since October. Abihad stated that 97 paramedics and firefighters have been killed and 188 wounded since the fighting began. The death toll includes emergency personnel from organizations affiliated with Hezbollah or other Lebanese factions. Since the clashes began, 1,974 people have been killed by Israeli fire, including 127 children, and over 9,350 have been wounded.
إذا بس نحن عدينا في ال3 أيام الماضيين فوق ال40 شهيد صار ساقط بلبنان من يعني العاملين في سيارات الإسعاف أو الإطفاء.
Meanwhile, Russia has evacuated 60 of its citizens, including diplomats and their families, from Beirut as Israeli strikes continue to target the city. Emergency Minister Alexander Korokov emphasized Russia's concern for its citizens' safety. This marks the first evacuation flight organized by Russia since Israel began its airstrike campaign on Beirut, which has killed over 1,000 people, according to Lebanon's health ministry.
Не безразлична боль наших граждан и граждан других стран в рамках гуманитарного реагирования, на которое мы абсолютно я бы сказал, даже высочайше готовы к выполнению этих задач. И этим мы демонстрируем, в том числе и сегодня, при эвакуации.
And now to discuss this further, I'm joined by News Central's senior international correspondent, Adeshewa Josh, and she joins us from Istanbul, Turkey. Adeshewa, it's been an intense 24 hours in Lebanon and Israel. What's the latest on this conflict?
Yes, indeed, Judith. It has been an intense 24 hours. We have seen at least 28 on-duty medics killed in the past 24 hours, according to the World Health Organization. Aerial and bombardment of Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon, Beirut, that's the capital of Lebanon, is also still ongoing, as well as the ground invasion by Israeli troops into southern Lebanon. On Hezbollah's part, Hezbollah has claimed that it bombed Israeli troops trying to cross over through the southern border. And just before I came on air, Hezbollah finally declared that it killed 17 of Israeli troops. That's a lot of casualty in one day on the Israeli side. Now, what we're seeing on the ground is that countries like Russia, Spain, Italy, Germany, and the United States, and a couple of other countries are now beginning to evacuate their citizens in anticipation of what experts have described as what appears to be a point of no return in the nature of escalation, Judith.
Now, Iran has also been warning other countries to, quote, refrain from engaging themselves in the conflict. What do you make of this?
That statement appears to be in response to the statement that U.S. President Joe Biden made earlier, saying, quote, he is discussing the possible Israeli attack on the Iranian oil facilities in response to Tehran's barrage of missile attack on Israel. What you then see is that the Hezbollah has been saying, and also Iran have been saying, that if any of this should ever happen, that Israel should expect an unconventional response. This was what Iran said. And Iran said it will also attack Israeli infrastructure. Now, this sort of rhetoric not only have a huge impact on the ongoing ceasefire effort, but also on the global economy. Just right after President Biden's speech on the possibility of an Israeli attack on Iranian oil facilities, we saw that the price of WTI crude went up by 5% for a couple of hours before it finally settled on $73 per barrel. The IMF is pushing, in fact, warning very loudly so, that this sort of almost all-out war, if not all-out war already, is going to have huge economic ramifications on the region. But it does appear that an all-out war is where both sides are headed along with their allies, Judith.
And we're also hearing renewed calls to end arms sales and exports to Israel. Are we likely to see that it actually happens?
So, yes, we are seeing this cacophony of calls saying that arms sales to Israel should be cut off. But the challenge with that is that the people who are making those calls at this time are not folks with the right kind of influence to effectively change the course of arms sales to Israel at this moment. We do know not too long ago that Italy, Belgium, Britain, and a couple of other countries, including the Netherlands, announced some sort of proportional restriction of arms sales to Israel. But the United States, Germany, and Denmark are still supplying a substantial amount of some of the deadliest weapons that Israel is deploying in this war. Earlier today, we saw mass protests in Berlin, the capital of Germany, calling on the German government to stop supplying arms to Israel. We've also heard a similar call from a UK celebrity asking the UK government to cut off arms sales to Israel. All of these are pressures, good pressure, if you like, that could maybe in the long term reverse the sort of arms sales to Israel that we're seeing in the course of this war. But in the immediate, it does not appear to have had any form of substantial impact on the access of arms that Israel has in this region.
Well, we wait to see what happens in the coming days and weeks. Adisha, Josh, they are senior international correspondent all the way from Istanbul, Turkey. Once again, many thanks for doing this with us. And we continue with our coverage on the Middle East conflict as Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels say they have carried out a drone attack on Tel Aviv, saying that drones reached their targets without being shot down. Meanwhile, the Israeli army said it had intercepted a suspicious aerial target off the coast of central Israel without specifically referencing the Houthis.
نفذ سلاح الجو المسير في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عملية عسكرية استهدفت هدفا حيويا في منطقة يافا تل أبيب في فلسطين المحتلة وذلك بعدد من الطائرات المسيرة نوع يافا وقد حققت العملية أهدافها بنجاح بفضل الله وذلك بوصول المسيرات إلى أهدافها دون أن يتمكن العدو من التصدي لها أو إسقاطها.
And you're watching the news beyond the continent. We go on a short break for now. When we return, we'll tell you that NATO's new Secretary General pledges support for Ukraine. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. We continue with conflicts, but now in Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging Western allies to intercept Russian missiles and drones targeting Ukraine. In a press conference alongside NATO chief Mark Rutte, Zelensky acknowledged the difficulty of this request, but emphasized the need for protection. Zelensky's plea comes as Ukraine faces ongoing attacks from Russia.
Більше рішучості партнерів в нашому регіоні – це те, що потрібно, щоб покласти край російському терору. Ми будемо і надалі переконувати наших партнерів щодо необхідності збиття російських ракет і дронів. Ми розуміємо, що це складне рішення, але тим не менш.
NATO's new Secretary General Mark Rutte has reaffirmed the alliance's support for Ukraine during his first trip as chief. In a speech in Kyiv, Rutte stated that his top priority is to ensure Ukraine's success in its fight against Russia's invasion. He emphasized that NATO stands with Ukraine and is committed to providing the necessary support to help the nation prevail. This visit marks a strong stance by NATO, and Rutte's leadership is expected to further solidify the alliance's commitment to Ukraine.
At the start of my mandate, to make crystal clear to you, to the people of Ukraine, and to everyone watching, that NATO stands with Ukraine. As the new NATO Secretary General, it is my priority and my privilege to take this support forward, working with you to ensure that Ukraine prevails.
And now we head to America, where Donald Trump resorted to crimes while trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat and should not escape charges. And those words they are from prosecutors. A new court filing challenges Trump's claim that he should avoid a trial thanks to a recent landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling. This said American presidents should be immune from persecution when acting in an official capacity. Trump was president when the alleged offenses were committed, but prosecutors say he was acting in a private capacity, not an official one. In response, Trump has repeated false claims that the 2020 vote was, quote, rigged, and suggested the timing of the filing's release was designed to hurt his 2024 campaign. And now we'll continue with the U.S. elections. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are entering the final one-month sprint to the most dramatic U.S. presidential election in modern history, with both candidates warning the fate of a divided nation hangs on a result that is still too close to call. Polls show the candidates almost neck and neck, with campaigns ramping up across swing states in the final weeks. For News Central, our international correspondent Afia Hagen has more.
The 2024 race has seen more twists than a Hollywood blockbuster, from the vice president's shock replacement of Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee to the Republican former president riding out 2 assassination attempts as he eyes a sensational comeback to the White House. Now the United States is bracing for a cliffhanger ending, with Trump and Harris neck and neck in the polls, and the Republican warning darkly of a repeat of the chaos that followed the 2020 election if he does not win this time around. The world is meanwhile waiting with bated breath to see who ends up in the Oval Office, at a time when the Middle East slips ever closer to all-out war, and Ukraine's fight for survival against Russia hinges on the US support that Trump has previously criticised. One thing is for sure, the next 4 weeks will see Harris and Trump, along with their running mates, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Republican Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, relentlessly hitting the campaign trail. America's idiosyncratic electoral college mean they will end up fighting for a few thousand votes in 7 key swing states that are expected to decide the election: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And as America decides, Harris and Trump will be offering voters 2 starkly different visions. With her slogan, "We're not going back," Harris promises to turn the page on an era of divisive politics. Trump pledges to make America great again, as he paints a picture of a dystopian nation that only he can fix. A result could also take days or weeks if there are disputed counts or legal challenges as expected, meaning the US election cliffhanger could last into January. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagen.
For more on this, we're now joined by international correspondent Afia Hagen. Afia, there's only 4 weeks until the election day, and Kamala Harris is making an important campaign stop. Please tell us more about this.
Yes, she is. As I said in my piece there, Wisconsin is one of those really important key swing states that when it comes to the Electoral College, it's worth a lot of votes. And she's going to be campaigning there with Liz Cheney. Now, Liz Cheney is a Republican former congresswoman who is the daughter of Dick Cheney, and he was a very prominent member of the Republican Party. Now, she has endorsed the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, which is a very unusual move, but Liz Cheney has said she will do everything possible to stop Donald Trump from reaching the White House. So this is an event that is really aimed at trying to get swing states and get those voters and get voters who are in the middle and perhaps aren't sure of who they're going to vote for, and trying to turn some Republicans. So they are going to be campaigning in North Carolina as well, another very, very important area, and one that's been hit by Hurricane Helene as well. So Liz Cheney on the campaign trail with Kamala Harris, a very unusual move, but one that Harris and Walz hopes will win them a whole lot of votes.
And the former First Lady, Melania Trump, has been promoting her new book, and we hear she's making unexpected political statements. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is unusual for a few reasons, Judith. First of all, because we don't really hear from Melania Trump. She hasn't really joined Donald Trump on any of his campaign stalks. We saw her at the Republican National Convention on the last night on stage with family, but that's just been about it. But she is promoting this book, which is out next week, and she spoke to The Guardian newspaper, and she talked about abortion and talked about the fact that there's no room for compromise when it comes to women's individual freedom. She's also followed that up with a video that she posted on social media. And basically she says, individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard without a doubt. There is no room for compromise when it comes to the essential right that all women possess from birth, individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean? Now, that's a really stark, staunch defense of abortion rights, and she usually is quite conservative, but this is something that I've been told she feels very, very strongly about, quite at odds with her husband's position on abortion, which is actually quite woolly. You know, he hasn't said one way or the other how he feels about states being able to choose whether women have the right to choose what happens to their bodies. Now, he has talked about how he's been proud of the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned while he was in office, but lately he's waffled on abortion rights when it comes to that, to be honest. He doesn't sound very clear on it. This is a very staunch defense of abortion rights by Melania Trump. In her book, she spoke to The Guardian about it, and now this statement that she posted on social media also. She doesn't really make political statements. She doesn't really say much, but this is a very, very strong statement to make.
And immigration remains a big issue in this election. What has Trump been saying in regards to this issue as well?
Well, yes, Trump was on the campaign trail yesterday, Judith, and he was talking about Springfield yet again, this place that keeps coming up in Ohio, where there's quite a few legally, and I'll say that legally settled Haitian migrants. Now, he has said he would revoke the temporary protected status from those Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. He said you have to remove the people and you have to bring them back to their own country. They are, in my opinion, it's not legal. Now, they are legal because they have the temporary protected status, like I said, but he said he would revoke that and bring them back to their own country. Now, we don't know the reasons why he has decided that he would do that. We know that he is very, very against immigration, especially when it comes to immigration of people of colour. And that's perhaps why he seems so hell-bent on making sure that when he is president, he will make sure that these people, even though they are legally settled in Springfield, Ohio, are returned back to their country. I don't know how he plans exactly on doing that. This could be, you know, another thing that he says on the campaign trail that he may not actually be able to do. But yes, Springfield, Ohio, once again in the news because of immigration.
Well, it's a famous state at this point. I'm sure even those in the northern part of Nigeria has never heard of Springfield, Ohio. Is going to hear about this with this election. But once again, I must say thank you so much, Afia Hagan. Afia is our international correspondent for News Central TV. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Remember that you can send us your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can always watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith TV.